Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Much better. My name is Michael Russo. I'm the multimedia manager with the County of San Diego. Not the city of San Diego, which if you've been following the news for the past couple of months is a really good thing. We couldn't hear from the mayor of Orlando next door, but it's still better than having a mayor with the city of San Diego who is known nationally for rather unscrupulous things. So glad to say he's now the former mayor of San Diego. But what we have today is a very, very distinguished panel. To my left, as you can see, we're talking about unique programming ideas today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get to that. The usual admonitions, silence your cell phones. They asked me to silence your pagers. Anybody still have a pager? Kind of figured. They'll each speak for about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So welcome, everybody. Let me introduce the panelists here first. To my immediate left is Luis Rocha. He's the video production coordinator for Public Cable Television Authority in Orange County, California, the other Orange County. And I've been doing this for many years. And Luis, when you start, maybe you can kind of talk about this Public Cable Television Authority. It's kind of a mashup of different cities in Orange County. After Luis, we're going to hear from Rick Brosnan. We have two Ricks on the panel today. Rick Brosnan is an executive producer for Fairfax County Government Television in Fairfax County, Virginia, which as a Southern Californian, I can say has traffic that is every bit as bad as in LA and San Diego. The channel's been doing government broadcasting or government cablecasting since 1984. Been doing this a long time and numerous NATOA awards. And then finally we'll hear from Rick Osmus, who's a media services manager from Arvada, Colorado. Also numerous NATOA awards over the years. He oversees operations for KATV Channel 8, photography as well as social media. Again, each will speak for about 15 minutes or so, should give us plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Now we're talking about unique programming ideas today. And one thing that we all have to do, talk about reality TV, being a big business now, and it has been for a few years, but we've been doing reality TV from the beginning, right? I mean, everything we do is reality TV. And the struggle for us, for everybody, is how do you attract eyeballs? Because you're competing for eyeballs for your product, just like Modern Family and Big Bang Theory and Fox News or whatever. Okay, so how do we produce that programming that's going to attract viewers and make yourself relevant and really give taxpayers the confidence that their tax dollars are being spent wisely? So that's what the three of them are going to be talking about today, and we're going to start off with Luis.
Thank you, Michael. All right, just touch on what the PCTA is, the Public Cable Television Authority, as Michael asked me to touch on. We are a JPA, Joint Powers Agency, so we are actually 4 cities who have combined, pooled our resources to give ourselves more of a competitive edge, buying advantage. The 4 cities combined can do much more than one city on its own, especially when one of our cities is only about 50,000 residents. They couldn't afford, say, a production truck unless they saved their PEG fees for 10 years. By pooling the resources, they can now have advantage of using the production truck, having a production pool available to them when they want to create their programming. So some of the other cities here, the smaller cities might want to consider possibly forming a joint powers agency to take advantage of this sort of thing. So regarding unique programming ideas, first off, just a quick show of hands. How many actually of you live in or near the community that you work in? Okay, so most of you know pretty much the ins and outs, backs and forth of what makes your city unique. How many new residents do you think feel that same way? We have to be the biggest cheerleaders for our city. I know a lot of people may have worked for a city or agency for, in some cases, decades. They tend to be a little more cynical about the community as a whole. I know I have that problem a lot with one of my city liaisons when I ask him, well, what's there fun to do in this city? Like, oh, well, there's really nothing going on here. It's like, I can pick up the paper, I can pick up their local magazine, read through and breeze through a couple of stories and see, oh, look, there's this new shop opening up, there's this unique restaurant opening up. Your inspiration can come from anywhere. One of the cities, that particular city actually has a new gluten-free, dairy-free bakery. They've been doing business there in the city, and this could be treated as an economic development piece. If your local news agency, news affiliate comes in and does a story, they're only going to cover it for 2 to 3 minutes, they're gone. You can come back and do a full 5, 10-minute behind the scenes, get in touch with the owner, find out why they decided to open up the shop, what benefit do they have, those types of allergies? Your inspiration can come from, like I said, anywhere. I don't know how many of you would be familiar with Huell Hauser, huge legend in California especially. He was originally from Tennessee. He came to California in his youth, fell in love with the state, and decided to create his own program called California's Gold. He took a gee whiz, golly, by golly shucks, what a great state. Look at all these wonderful little nooks and crannies within the state, California's hidden gold. That program actually taught me that despite what most people think, Sutter's Mill wasn't the place they first discovered gold in California. It was actually somewhere around Santa Barbara that they first discovered gold 10 years before they discovered it in Sutter's Mill, long before the gold rush actually occurred. That's what he did. He found these little nuggets of information and developed whole stories on them. So again, you can do this easily within your own city. Last night I had a conversation with a gentleman who's in this room that NASCAR was founded near his city. Like, that would be such a great idea. Find out the history. And NASCAR, as you know, is a huge sport now. Everyone loves it. I'm not a big particular fan of it, but, but I could still go in and find out, okay, why did they choose to do business here? Why are these race teams all based in these cities? So you can start developing more and more programming ideas based on just that little nugget of information. Again, inspiration can come from anything, anywhere. Local news story, they've already done some of the work for you. A newspaper story can cover, again, a new business opening up. You can just read the little press release that they've handed out, come up with an idea based off of that. Excuse me, my tablet just fell asleep. A lot of the programming that we can create can be economic development stories. Again, the new bakery, the gluten-free bakery, turns into an economic development piece. People within your own economic development department, they're always looking to lure businesses in the city. You can talk to them, find out who just came to town. Maybe they want to get some free publicity, free press, get their businesses going. Talk to your local chamber of commerce. Is there a new business that wants to be promoted? They will love the free publicity. It's a free commercial for them, gets you talking about what's going on in your city. All right, and then more importantly, you have a lot of resources at your disposal. A lot of people here, I know I met a group from New Jersey last year who weren't really sure what to do in their programming, but the thing is, we don't work in a vacuum. We have a room full of people from all across the country here who work in the same field that we do. You can go ahead and take your inspiration from them. Just talk to your neighbors, talk to your other group organizers, find out what they're doing in their community, what they've done in programming. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You can go ahead and borrow their idea, maybe expand on it, see what they've done, and even develop your own idea based off of that. There was a program, I'm not going to mention the city or even the topic because we saw this during the judging for the GPA awards. But based on this PSA that we saw in my offices, we looked at it and it's like, that was such a great lead into something. We would have done it this way. We could recreate this or even develop beyond the PSA that originally was. We had this conversation about 10, 15 minutes just on how to expand on an original story, and this type of PSA wasn't even in our area. We don't do this. For us, mind you, I work in Huntington Beach, so we have the Huntington Beach cleaning crew, the beach crew. They show up on the beach every Thursday morning at 5 a.m. and clean the beach before the weekend for all the tourists to come in. So this is what I'm actually going to give you, everyone here, a little idea to create your own story if you haven't done something like this, called Unsung. Everybody has a story there's someone in your community that probably has not gotten any sort of recognition for what they've been doing for however many years. Could be the librarian named Rosie who was a teacher in a previous working relationship. Now she is a librarian, has been reading children's books for 20 years, and now has been reading books to the children of the children she first read books to. Someone could be their crossing guard who's been a retired police officer, military, someone who already has a great backstory before they even went on to create what they're doing now. During yesterday's storytelling workshop, I'm sure a lot of people here, some people here were here, there was I call it the rock star, the guy who was balancing rocks. He's like, that was a great story based on essentially just a guy standing up rocks. What was his story? Why did he come and do it? Why is he doing this? So we have a lot of things to work from. And again, if you want to go ahead and create the story of Unsung, this actually, the Unsung occurred to me as an idea just based on my notes coming to this lecture. I've already assigned this to my producer to incorporate into one of her programs. So again, the inspiration comes from anywhere, and everybody has a story. So it's up to us to find out what that story is. Where do we want to go from there?
That's a very good point, because my background was news. I did news in San Diego for 16 years, and one thing you learn doing that very quickly is every good story is a people story. And you can completely take that into government as well, because yeah, you have this great program, et cetera, but what about the people who run the program? What about the people who are out there in the community doing that day in, day out? One great example, and it was produced by one of my staff who's in the room, Dominic Fulgoni there in the back. We have detector dogs at the county's Department of Ag Weights and Measures. They go in and inspect packages for invasive pests and things like that. So what he did was a piece where he just followed the dog handler and the dog at a FedEx facility in San Diego. And it's got shots of the dog up in the conveyor belt as packages are rolling by, and if the dog senses something, he does this. And so we learned about the program through the dog, of course, but also the dog's handler, Jeremy. It was a very nice job. And I bring that up because the state of California, I don't know if there's anybody here from state government, but they produced a video on the program statewide. And it's a great example of sort of the old way of government programming versus a new way of government programming. What the state of California did was, they followed around, I think, 3 different handlers and their dogs, and it's kind of a cheesy video with music in the background going, and we don't really get to learn about the people. We don't get to learn about the dog's past. Was it a dog that was brought in from Germany, or was it a dog that was rescued from a shelter or anything like that? Whereas the piece that we did, that Dominic did back there, you really got to know the program through the eyes of that handler. It's a people story. Every good story is a people story. So, with that note, thanks, Louis. Let's move on to Rick Brosnan from Fairfax County, Virginia.
Well, I've been listening to some of Louis's inspirations and program ideas and thinking about how Fairfax County government, the channel that I manage, works a little different, but also how we have evolved in the last couple of years. We've been around doing meetings and government programming since 1984, which is a long time, and I wanted to talk about process a little bit because I think we're all being influenced by some of the same things, and some of these factors have really caused us to try to streamline, change what we're doing, in some cases changing the content, and in some cases changing just how something comes about, which is, I think, what we're largely talking about. So years ago, there used to be a somewhat, looking at it now, cumbersome process where our government clients would apply for production services, essentially time, up to a year, not up to, over a year in advance. They would think about what their communications needs might be, submit program proposals for not the coming budget year, but the one after the coming budget year, which, looking back, seems kind of hard to believe. There would be some flexibility in the process in that based on something that may have happened or a need that you couldn't anticipate, you could change your topic so that if you had essentially applied for the right amount of production services, you were still okay. But still, looking back on it, it seems kind of cumbersome and what you wouldn't really want to go through. I think 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, maybe a little longer, my boss, who was then in my job, the division director, executive producer job, and he's now our agency director, tried to, working with our Office of Public Affairs, come up with a much more responsive process and essentially do a quarterly plan. So all you'd have to think about is what you might need in the coming quarter, and we wanted to be more responsive, and that instituted a big change. But interestingly enough, I think people expect things much sooner than that. Their needs are much greater than having to plan something out that far in advance. And so essentially what I'm getting to is we just wound up throwing the whole thing out. So now if you're a Fairfax County government agency and you need something, you just call me and say, well, here's what I'd like. And this is something that's come up, this is a program I want to publicize, or we've been in the news for something and we need to get some information out, and they just call. Of course, we still have to try to plan our work, and I still have quarterly goals and things like that I need to work around, but now all of that is on me. In order to be responsive to the government communicators, you can't call me and say, I'd like a 15-minute documentary, and I'd like to start tomorrow, and by the way, I need it in a month. You can't do that, but you can call me and say, I need something right away, and I need it, maybe even I need it tomorrow, and one way or another, using one of our formats, we will respond to that. We were talking before among the panel and Michael before we started today about short pieces versus long form, the kind of traditional things that you see on access channels, not just government access, but public access and educational access. And the fact that everything is kind of evolving to these shorter pieces. There are channels where that is all you see. Perhaps some of them are combined in a magazine show, but essentially all of the resources are going towards producing these shorter pieces that people seem more interested in, turned around very quickly, and I guess meeting the shorter attention spans of today. In Fairfax County, we are operating 2 channels, a public channel and a instructional channel. Most of the resources are going towards the public, the channel for the public, but we're still doing all of the traditional formats that we've done over the years. We do 15-minute documentaries, we do 30-minute studio shows, we do magazine pieces, we do public service announcements, but we're trying to do them in a more responsive way and kind of cut through the red tape a little bit. And what this has led to is the programming idea I wanted to talk about today evolved from the desire on the part of our clients, our government communicators, to do something and have a product instantly. And they wanted more than one use for this product. It essentially, it in some ways evolved out of the desire of our Office of Public Affairs to have video to put on the county's YouTube channel, which they actually operate. But the primary social media that Fairfax County government uses is the county government YouTube page, and it reflects content of all the government agencies. we wanted to do that, but we are operating a cable channel, and we didn't just want to go from operating Channel 16 to now populating a YouTube channel. We still have responsibility of programming a channel that's now operating 24 hours a day and that we think people are still watching. So as part of we instituted a strategic planning kind of initiative to address that need and to address a number of other things that are all going on at the same time. We're planning the conversion to high def. We're working out a number of workflow processes and technical, going through a lot of technical changes, and then also trying to address this need for programming that is turned around quicker, is more responsive, and is meeting our client needs. One of the perceptions among our clients in some cases was that our programming was good, they knew that it won awards, they were happy with what we were doing, but in some cases they thought, rightly or not, that it was taking too long to produce. Now, sometimes that perception is based on things that maybe the client is asking for. You know, there's things that when you're being very careful with your message and vetting the message and as government people do, they want everything said in a certain way and they want everything right. In some cases, committees are actually reviewing. They want to review the content at the scripting phase. They want to have planning meetings just to talk about what you're going to do. They want to vet, obviously, the content at the end of the production, and sometimes even having it vetted by committee. And all of these factors kind of combine with the things that we all know you run into when you're doing something like producing a 15-minute documentary. And frankly, we're doing well, I think, to get something like that done in 3 months, which in some cases, that was typically what we were trying to do and often would succeed. Sometimes it would take a little bit longer than that. So on the one hand, they're going, we need something right away. On the other hand, they want, obviously, we want the content to be correct, and with working for government communicators, that is a very strong factor. You're very important to all of our clients. So what we came up with was a new format that, for the first time, we're doing pieces on a regular basis that we turn around in the same day. And we call these pieces dailies, and they work, and they're part of a program called 16 Around Fairfax. So the content that we go out and produce in a day, typically minute 30, 2-minute pieces, go to our Office of Public Affairs, and they're put up on the same day on the county's YouTube channel. But we also use the fresh content to do essentially what's like a magazine program, but it's a magazine program without a host, without any of those normal transitions that you have in magazine programs. It's essentially all of these segments combined with the newest, freshest content at the top of the program. And we also use the content, in some cases, our clients want it as well. They want to point back to it on their websites, or they want DVDs of the content, depending on what it is. If it's something that has some evergreen use, like it points out something that is going to be going on for a while, it can be repurposed in a lot of ways. So this is our way of trying to sort of respond to the need for fresh content and for turning it around quickly. And actually, I brought some of them, and I thought maybe I'll show one of them and then kind of talk about what goes into how we produce these. 6 minutes to go. I guess I better start showing my clips. All right. Abraham, let's show the Burke-Tyson's connector piece.
We're here today doing runtime testing for our new routes between Burke VRE and Tyson's that are going to start operating on January 14th. Runtime testing is when we actually have the bus drive the route to make sure that the times that we have listed on the schedules are accurate so that our passengers can have that predictable commute that they're looking for with the help of the 495 express lanes. The Burke VRE to Tyson's line actually consists of 4 routes. 3 of those routes have specialized patterns once they get into Tyson's Corner, and the 4th has a circulation pattern that combines the previous 3. This is going to allow our passengers to pick which route is the most direct route for them to get to their employer or whatever destination that they have in Tyson's. Because it is a direct route, the fare is $3.65, but for VRE passengers that are transferring off of the Manassas line, it's actually a free fare. The main goal of all of these efforts today and year-round that we do are to take the single occupancy vehicle off of the road. And if that means that you ride share with carpools or van pools, if you take transit, if you telework, any of these options, the more cars that we can take off of the road, the less traffic that we're going to ultimately have. For more information, you can check out fairfaxconnector.com/express for our schedules as well as the route maps for this new service.
Okay.
This year, we're really excited to be hosting our first annual Riverbend Smallmouth Bass Rodeo
Go ahead.
right here out on the Potomac River. The tournament is lasting all summer long, and we're going to be focusing on catching smallmouth bass. The Potomac River supports a really healthy population of this species of fish, and it's a really fun and exciting fish to catch for anglers of all levels, basically. The rules and regulations for the rodeo are we're really trying to promote a catch and release tournament, meaning that if you catch a fish, what we're asking contestants to do is to snap a quick picture of that fish and then release it immediately back into the water. We're awarding prizes to the 3 biggest fish. And what we want contestants to do is take a picture of the fish that they catch, and then they can upload it to our Facebook page. Since it is on the Potomac River, you are going to need to either have a Virginia freshwater fishing license or a Maryland freshwater fishing license if you're older than age 16. If you're younger than 16, you do not need a license. There is a $5 entrance fee for all participants, and you can enter just as easily as calling up Riverbend. And you can call, and whoever's working at the front desk will sign you right up. And again, registration is due by May 18th. That's the first day of the fishing tournament. And the tournament will last all summer long until August 31st. It's a great way to spend some summer evenings or mornings or weekends. Great way to be out with your family. And there's always a chance that you'll catch one of those winning fish.
Thanks, Abraham. So with all these pieces, we do them in 30-second increments. They tend to be minute 30, 2-minute pieces. We do the 30-second increments because it makes it easy to program this, the program that we assemble them into. Everything was kind of set up in a way that the things that are taking more time were kind of eliminated. So we're not trying to time out a show. We can very easily do things in 30-second increments. We just move 1 or 2 PSAs at the end, and you've got the program timed out, and so we've got essentially new content every day. In terms of the vetting, in those 2 pieces and in almost all of these pieces, we're using somebody that's a spokesman that is the expert on the topic, which is not anything new, but we're kind of eliminating a lot of other interviews. So that takes care of a lot of need for any vetting. If the PIO can't speak about it correctly, you're kind of lost anyway. So in those 2 cases, that's what you saw. And so there's really no need for like a client to come down and let me see that before it goes on the air. There's not any real planning meetings or scripting involved because there's no narration that's deliberate. So you really have to get usually just one good spokesperson. Sometimes there's more than one. You have to get them to sort of talk about the thing of interest in a way that carries the whole piece. That essentially, if you have that, you can put it together. And then it's just whatever shots you can get that day on that topic put together. There's typically no music. Every once in a while there's an effect or two. There aren't many. We still do those things in other programming, The idea here is it's just something you can turn around in 3 or 4 hours. And so far, clients have been really happy with it. So I told you I wasn't sure I was going to fill 15 minutes. How am I doing?
Dude,
He's
you
getting
filled
out,
17
he's getting out the
minutes. Well
hook.
done. Look at this, right there, perfect. All right, well done. Who here has some sort of online channel, if you will, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo, some sort of way of online? Okay, are there any restrictions, or as far as you know, are there any restrictions on your employees and government employees in your jurisdiction being able to view video content at work? Yeah, raise your hand. Okay. Because we have that in certain departments too, and that's one thing our chief administrative officer is really upset with, and she wants to change. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, it says you're all done, so, yeah, sorry. That's one thing she wants to change, and if there's any way you could, through a little bit of pressure or a little bit of something else, try to make it so employees can watch video from their work site. You know, it could be at lunch or whatever, but if you can produce minute 30 videos or 1 minute videos that are very easy to sit there at your desk and watch, you know, sometimes it's going to be internal videos for employees only, and that's a great way to get content pushed out. So, okay, we're now going to go to Rick Osmus from the city of Arvada, Colorado. Rick?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to kind of switch up gears here a little, start off talking about Arvada, what's unique about Arvada. Yes, we still are surviving the floods that we've had and endured over the last 6-7 days. Our neighbors to the north are in our thoughts and prayers, but we've all weathered the storm and we're moving forward. So Arvada, we're just over 108,000 people. We're located, if you were to drive from Denver to Boulder, we're right in the middle on the way to Boulder. We have about 44,000 households, medium age of about 40. In Arvada. The unique thing about Arvada is, yes, we have 2 cable providers. We're kind of unique in the metro area. We have TDS, Baja, and we have Comcast. Unfortunately, they do not compete against each other. We have a dividing line down almost the western edge of Arvada that they cannot cross. So it makes it very interesting for us to work with, especially with franchise renewal and all that kind of stuff. A little about Arvada Media Services. There's 4 of us that are full-time. I have one part-time that comes in after working for one of the Fox local stations and does most of our meetings for us in the evening. The 4 full-time staff people, 3 of them actually, I'm really not included in that. They do the majority of the videography and editing. So I want to talk, next slide if you could please, Abraham. A little about how we used to do programming prior to 2010. I moved over to the station in 2000, and we used to produce 4 1/2-hour programs, as you can see. Next slide, please. There we go. Our 4 1/2-hour programs consisted of Cop Talk, Arvada at Work, A-Files, and Let's Talk. Cop Talk was probably one of our longest running programs and most popular programs. Involved a lot of short segments about the police department. One of our biggest things was ride-alongs with the police officers. We do something called Cop Corner, just safety tips. Do some upcoming events, just neat, interesting stuff. We'd also tie in some of the police award ceremonies, outstanding stories like that. Our second one was Arvada at Work. That focused more on Arvada, not so much Arvada businesses, but Arvada city workers doing unique things on the job, what's going on in the water department or what's going on in the parks department. Our A-Files was kind of focused around our mayor being the host, and he would reach out to communities, businesses, different events in the community, and interview people. So it was a 30-minute, like I said, all these are 30-minute programs. Our last one was Let's Talk. This is a producer we brought on. Her name was Deborah Lindgren, and she's still working for us, but she resides here in Sanford, Florida. And her idea at the time, she left 9 News, which is one of our leading local stations in the Denver area, and she came with this idea to lure one of their longtime anchors, Ed Sardella, who went on the air in '74 and retired in 2001. So if you were any time a resident in Denver or grew up in Denver, you knew who Ed Sardella was. He was that kind of an icon. So when he retired, we convinced him to do a half-hour program for us. We worked with partnership with the city of Lakewood because they had a wonderful studio. And we had the staff, so we did a joint venture with them, and we produced this show for 8 years. It was a monthly show, and with his name and stature, he was able to lure in some really big names for us. I mean, anything from Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos to the governor. When we got the Democratic convention, we got the lead person there. I mean, another one was we got the local brewer up in Fort Collins, Belgian Brewery. The guy who started that in his basement, he came down. So we were able to really do a wide range of programming, which was really interesting. But after 8 years, Ed kind of looked at himself and says, people don't know me anymore. You know, I haven't been on the air long enough, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of decided with that program in 2009, I believe it was. 2010, next slide, please. We decided that we need to change the way we were doing programming at the City of Arvada. First of all, a half-hour program at the time you couldn't upload to YouTube. They were only allowing 15 minutes, and I think that changed in late 2010. So we thought, let's keep the viewer's attention. Let's go to something to about a 5-minute segment. Sometimes they'll stretch to a 7-minute segment, just depending on the subject matter. So we came up with about 14 or 15 different programs. I think I've left a few off. I'll go through them here and briefly describe them. At the top is Art-Centric. It's strictly about Arvada Center. It's an arts and humanities center in Arvada. It's kind of the icon, the jewel of the city. We strictly cover all their programming, their plays, any kind of children programming up there. Veteran Voices, I'll talk more about that later on. A-Files kind of stayed the same. We still do a lot of just subject matter around Arvada. Parking It strictly talks about our parks. What's unique about our parks is there been an upgrade to our park, talk about disc park or a dog park that we just built. It's a very interesting piece because I think we got something like 64 different parks in Arvada. That number could be off. Making the Grade, I'll talk more about that one too because I got a little tease on that one. Jefferson County Insights. I reached out to our county. We live in Jefferson County. It's the largest county in Colorado. And I reached out to them and said, you know, we'd really like to get more information on Channel 8 about Jefferson County. Maybe we can work a deal here. Well, they were able to fund some of our work, and so it was kind of a joint venture. So we do some interesting features from the sheriff's department to public education out there to their commissioners. Arvada Insight, that is strictly our mayor's show. It's a 5-minute segment. He'll go out to interview business owners. He'll interview the public works director about a project that might be going on in Arvada. It always helps to have a wonderful mayor that is really good on camera. So we do have that right now, knock on wood, and he's wonderful to work with. Council Connection. So we have some council members that want to get involved too, and I can't blame them. So they reached out to us, and we've given them their own show too. We've kind of broken it down. I think they can do up to 4 to 6 programs, not each. They have to kind of divide their time up, but 4 to 6 segments a year, and they kind of decide who gets to go next. It's kind of a rotation basis. Profiles. That's when we pick out an interesting person in our community or even a city worker, and we profile them and let them tell their story and what makes them so unique about Arvada's community. Connected Colorado. That's one of probably our greatest partnerships that we have in the metro area. We have an organization called CCUA. It's Colorado Communications Alliance and Utilities. And we used to be GMTC, but we are now one of the newest members of NATOA, chapters of NATOA. And I believe, I see Darren in the back there, I think we have close to 40 communities now that have joined this organization around the state. And it's every other month we put together, everybody contributes a program. We try to find a good subject matter, and if you have a great story that you just done, we have you contribute to it, and then we put together a 30-minute program. So that's really kind of out of the realm of our 5-minute segment, but I just wanted to talk about Connected Colorado. It's a huge success in the Colorado area. City Beat. That was something that my new communication director came in with. She started about a year ago, and she wanted us to reach out and strictly do a 5-minute segment on different departments and just keep it internal. And it was kind of interesting, and then talking with staff, we kind of went, we're doing some good stuff here. Why aren't we telling the public about this? So we kind of tweaked them a little, had our producers write it just a little bit different to where it was more public info instead of internal info. And it's been a huge success. We just started that this year, and the departments are really loving it. We're kind of having to curtail them down. They think we can do 10 interviews in a 5-minute piece, and it just doesn't work. So we're training them. It's getting there, so we're working on it. Arvada's attic. Arvada has a huge history. It was actually the first place gold was found in Colorado back in 1870, I believe it was. We have a lot of history. We have the water tower. We have a flour mill. We have what they call now the railroad track that brought in the flour. We were at one time the celery capital of the world. We actually shipped celery to the White House back in the day. So we have a lot of history there, and we like to reach that, and we like to keep that, and we have a wonderful historical society that we work with. Eco Diary. It's all about sustainability anymore. It's one of those programs. We have a sustainability coordinator. She really feeds us the program ideas there. Around Arvada, I left off there, but I want to talk about that. That is our monthly video calendar, and what it is strictly voiceover about events that are coming up in Arvada in the next month or that have happened, like if we had a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting, we kind of inform the public. It's a quick 2.5 to 3.5 minute piece, and it's a great informational piece. And then unscripted, I'm going to talk about that more, so got a little tease on that one. So our first one I'm going to kind of lead into here before Abraham plays it. Veteran Voices is a program that I got the idea a couple years back coming to NATOA. There was a lot of talk that, our World War II veterans are, passing away and we're not getting their story told. And so growing up in Arvada, I had the local historian living behind me, and she's now in a retirement home, and she's continuously writing books about Arvada's history. And so she was reaching out to me for some help and some ideas and thoughts, and so I kind of turned the favor back at her, and I said, you know what, I have this great idea. I'd love to do some stories, and being here in the senior home, I'm sure you got connections to some wonderful any kind of veterans, not just World War II. And so she set us up, and we started going out, and we do about, I believe, 6 a year now, and we're trying to reach out to more of the American Legion and other senior homes, but this retirement community, these people are wonderful. And we actually went out there about a week before Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor last year, and we sat them all down in a room and just let them talk about what they were doing that day and what they remember about it. And it was kind of funny because the lady goes, well, I was at a Redskins game, and you got to understand, Arvada has a high school and their mascot's Redskins, and growing up there, I went there, I'm like, wow, this lady, that's kind of cool. She remembers being at a Redskin football game, and I'm like, going, wait a minute. Pearl Harbor happened on Sunday morning. I didn't understand what was going on because we don't play football on Sunday morning in high school. I'm going to find out she was at the Washington Redskins game, and she got called into work, and she had to start answering phones, and she worked the phones and dispatching phone calls to the White House while all this was going on. But this piece here is actually up for an award at the end of this week. It's a World War II veteran. It's not the whole piece. It's just about a 30-second clip. I just want to kind of get you an idea. His name's Warren Dowling. Well, hopefully, do we got music? I mean, we've got sound? There we go. That doesn't look like we got sound. We've had some issues, and it's more my fault than Abraham's. He's been trying since 8 o'clock this morning to get me going. But anyways, so we go out and we do a story. This gentleman, he wrote a book at the age of 90, and this is his promotion. Little book signing that he had going, and I think it's called Wagons to the Moon. So this is up for an award, like I said, on Thursday nights. So wonderful program. We've had huge success and great feedback on it. Thanks, Abraham. That's all right. Moving on to our next one is another program we came up to. We reached out to the school district. And it's called Making the Grade. We do a lot of different stories on our school district, but Making the Grade, this one is about super students. And each year we ask, we have 4 local high schools, and we ask the counselors at each high school to pick out a super student. And then we surprise them in the classroom with our producer. And then in the spring, we do the same thing, but this time we reach out to the student council and get them involved, and we ask them to elect a super teacher, and then we go out and do a 5-minute feature. Let's go ahead and play that, see if that'll work. If we don't have audio, you can see all this online. We have everything video on demand. Nope, audio's not working. So anyways, you can see this gentleman was amazing. I really didn't even know the story was developing until I watched it. This boy is a senior at Ralston Valley High School last year, and he's blind. And the amazing thing about him is he participates in the marching band. And the way the kids got around him, and it was just made for a really heartfelt story. It was a great story, and it's amazing this kid didn't make any excuses. You can see him there in the yellow. His tutor was a little surprised by the cameras too, but that's what makes the programming so good. The gal there in the red is our producer, Wendy Brockman. She's also our on-the-air host. That was the principal announcing it and the students. And then we kind of dive into it. We interviewed his parents. We interviewed him. Got footage of him out on the football field practicing with the marching band. So it was a great program.
Again, because of the way the state of California's PEG funding works, all of our money has to be dedicated to our channel broadcast. So technically, we're not allowed to spend on web broadcasting as much as our cities want us to. So I have to walk a fine line between when we can put our stuff on YouTube versus getting it on the channel, because we want to drive traffic to our channels because that's where we get our PEG funding from.
And that's the same for ours, so that's why we're trying to find out, if you were creating other opportunities possibly to do some fundraising to cover putting more things like on the web and YouTube and other areas, things like that. Because our pet fees too are kind of that same thing. That's answers the question.
Right. Again, I put an internal delay between when I broadcast something onto YouTube versus when it goes on the channel. Channel goes immediately. YouTube gets about 2 weeks to a month, depending on the program. Regarding fundraising, because we are PEG government access, we're not allowed to really raise funds. There's whole other classes, lectures going on about that sort of stuff. No, I don't want to touch that just because I know how sensitive a topic it can be.
Okay, Dwight Williams, City of Houston. This is for Richard with Fairfax. You mentioned having those immediate turnaround requests, and you talked about a format or some formats that you utilize to accommodate that. Can you elaborate on those formats and either of you guys that might have experienced those immediate turnarounds, what you do to accommodate that?
Well, the format that accommodated like wanting something right now and not wanting to do any planning or, is the 16 around Fairfax. So we still do our other things, and we get requests for things that people want quickly. They may want not a 16 around Fairfax, but a magazine piece with some production value in it. And sometimes some of those you do, they're almost like a little mini documentary. But there's other ones that you do where maybe somebody wants something and they want to do it in a month, and we can still do that. So I mean, I think the 16 around Fairfax is essentially it. Sometimes instead of like doing a 2-minute piece, it'll be something very informational, like just a little 30-second PSA, but something that they want the same day. And so, but we do it all on that platform. And the idea also is that we do it on the channel and on the web at the same time. So you were mentioning you had a lag, but we don't really do that. We just look at not wanting to do things that too much that can't be used on the channel, because that's what we're doing. But I'm fine with it going out on the web right at the same time.
The one thing that I failed to mention is when we converted from the 30-minute programs to the 5-minute segments, it allowed us to keep our programming updated constantly. When we were doing 30-minute program, we'd have it on the air by the first of the month. It'd run all the month long, and then by the 28th, you're losing your visitors. to your channel. So with doing 5-minute segments, in the perfect world, it'd be nice to be cranking out 2 or 3 every week, and you can update it. But depending on when you get interviews and when you get the B-roll and all that kind of falls. But at least it allows us to keep a fresh programming on a week-to-week basis. And this year, we're in line to do 94 different segments this year alone with, the 3 staff that we have, and which is amazing that we can turn around 5-minute segments like that. But and it's easy for me to program into our tightrope media system and keep that programming fresh.
There's also a little bit of education involved with some of your maybe elected officials or department heads and things like that. I once had the head of our Health and Human Services Agency come to me, and he said he wanted a 40-minute video to be played at a Board of Supervisors meeting. We talked him down to about 35, and then about 27, and then 21, and finally we settled for about 14 and a half. Which is still really long. Most of the stuff we do goes from 30 seconds to about 3.5 minutes typically. They're very, very short. But when you have a department head who says, yeah, we want to do a 15-minute video, and I tell them, no, let's get it down to 4 or 5. But why? Well, because most people are going to tune out after 3 or 4 minutes, especially if they're watching it on the web. And the message you want to get across is not going to be successful. Trust me on this. And then they start going, okay, well, all right. Well, how about this? What if we maybe did 3-minute videos? Okay, that can work too, depending on the time. You break down topics. Okay, that can also work as well. So there is a little bit of education sometimes involving a sledgehammer maybe or something, for some of these either elected officials or department heads to really realize what it is they're asking for. Because some people still have the idea that if a 2-minute video is good, then a 22-minute video is going to be great. And it's just the opposite nowadays. Any other questions for our panel? We have a couple of minutes left.
Yes, hi. Terry Carter from the City of Houston. I'd just like to know, with the programs that you have, is there any type of sponsorships that are attached to any of the programs?
No, we don't do any sponsorship. Yeah.
I'm going to beat him real quick. Lefty Basurto Matthews from City of Tucson. For your programs, how often do they repeat, and how long do you keep them on the air?
Well, we program for 4 different cities for JPA, but generally a program repeats on the channel like clockwork every day at a certain time. And unfortunately, this is a problem with a lot of our elected officials and staff is like, oh, well, every time I tune into the channel, I see the same thing. Well, guess what? If you tune in every day at 3 o'clock on Channel 7, you're going to see Oprah. Well, that's why that's her time slot. So we have to educate them in that instance too. But yeah, we do program every day. Some programming, if we already have a backlog of episodes, then we'll just go ahead and replay the same program, but a different episode of that program. But it is every day. Original programming starts at, I believe, 7 a.m. until about 9 or 10 p.m., and then bulletin board overnight.
With me, there's no set amount of time that something replays. We do a magazine program where we do a new program every month. So that's pretty consistent. And then there's other things, just depending on how long the information is still good, how much in the way of services are available, just a number of things that would determine how long something runs. In some cases, we probably have things running more than or longer than we want to, but we're working on that.
Our programming runs pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, 7 days a week. So our biggest thing is we're trying to hit those demographics. We're finding that the older generation that orders cable stays on the lower tier, and that's where we're at right now. I know with our franchise negotiations, we're trying to get up onto the HD tier also, because I think the younger generation is watching HD, and it's all HD, and so if Channel 8's not there, they're not going to watch us or see us. So we do saturate our channel with our programming.
Tom Hanson, City of Palm Coast, TV 199. My question is about viewership metrics. Social's very easy to gain analytic information and data from. What about your PEG channel? What are you doing? Are you sponsoring or administering any viewership surveys? And then are you tying that to your decision process for programming?
We don't have any sort of surveys to do that. The only way we know people are watching is if the channel goes down, they call in. Which, if our music channel goes down, we get bombarded by calls. If the morning exercise show doesn't go on, there are calls just nonstop. But otherwise, we really have no way of checking our traffic.
Interesting, we have a morning exercise show, and if for some reason that doesn't play, we get calls too.
Yeah.
Like people like their yoga in the morning.
Yeah.
We've done surveys in the past where we haven't done any lately, and so we're looking for ways to really try to measure, like on cable, what that is. And with the social media and on the web, you do have that advantage. You know how many hits, and so that's useful.
Yeah, for us, there's no way of measuring it. We do a citizen survey every 2 years, I believe it is, and that should be coming out in the next 2 months. But we used to also have the weather or the temperature and time plug on our channel, and boy, when that went off the air, boy, that's when we started getting phone calls.
Great. And the second question is about long-form programs, concerts, parades. Are you still accommodating for those with your crews going out and doing remote productions
Yes.
and
Yes.
filling
Yes.
time with those?
Yes.
Yes, mostly during the summer, of course, or the summer concert series.
Yeah, great.
We're doing a lot of concerts, more than in the past, summer concert series.
We used to do high school football games, but it got too costly, so we've put that on the side burner for now. But one thing that we do for the Arts Center that a lot of people aren't aware of is we actually do their archive, what we call an archive shoot. We actually go up with a 2-camera shoot and videotape their whole production play. It's a very high-end plays, and then we archive it for them for future use.
Nice.
So that's some of the stuff we do on the side.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mitzi Herrera from Montgomery County, Maryland. Rick from Fairfax. Can you talk just a minute about the Fairfax 16, your web segments? Just do the nuts and bolts of how many, are you using one, like an editor, videographer? Do you have somebody out in the field who comes back and an editor who's assigned to that? And can you just talk for a minute about what you had to do with your staff who was used to having 3 months to do a 15-minute piece to say, we want to turn these things around in a day? Because I think that's kind of, frankly, for a lot of folks, it's the producers you've had who've been there for a long time who are used to doing shows in a certain way and getting them to embrace change. So can you just talk the nuts and bolts of what you need to do it and how you made it happen?
Sure, and I know we're running out of time, but I can address that in a couple minutes. While we've done things like 15-minute documentaries that take a few months to produce, it wasn't entirely new. We've had to turn things around quickly before. They've done shorter pieces before, magazine pieces, PSAs. We do sometimes live coverage. So it's not an entirely foreign concept, but it does involve some reallocation of resources. And we actually did, that was a little bit of an adjustment. When you have, our staff has 4 full-time videographers, and then we have some freelancers. If you're going to tell public affairs, any day you have something, all you have to do is call us, and we're going to send somebody out. That's the thing that was new. In order to do that, I have to have somebody, one of those 4 full-time people that could have been scheduled previously for a planned shoot has to be available. You can't kind of try to reallocate it on the spot and tell people we'll have somebody on no notice that can. So that was kind of the adjustment, and we did that in different ways. And I also tried to do it in a way that if there isn't something that day, that person isn't sitting there without something really useful to do, because then you're not using your resources very well. And then just in terms of like putting the piece together, they're structured in a way that our staff really doesn't have. I mean, it's sometimes a little bit rusty trying to put something together in 2 hours, but we kept the structure deliberately simple enough that they can all do it. So it's not very many people involved in putting, like the segments that I showed earlier. It's a shooter, it's a producer, and that's it. And it's like then the next day they're on to something else. And in the case of the shooter, it's not even the day, it's just a few hours of their day.
There's no greater way to educate someone than to say, you know what, not as many people are going to watch if you make it 30 or 40 minutes long. If you keep it 3 or 4 minutes long, bite-sized chunks, you're going to have more viewers. So, any other questions for our panel? All right, thank you very much, guys. Well done.
I enjoyed yours too. Thank you. Especially on the different doesn't matter. I